intense diplomacy is ongoing to bring an end to the Syrian war, and as talks collapse in Geneva, let's turn to our Middle East analyst, Mr. Meir Javedanfar. He's based in Tel Aviv. Thanks for being with us on Asia Today, Mr. Javedanfar. Now, as we mentioned, as the talks are collapsing in Geneva, the focus has shifted from a political solution to financial assistance. But money does not make quick solution to the humanitarian suffering in Syria. So why is the donors' conference important?
It's very important, this donor conference, Mang, because as you just said, the Syria Peace Talks, only after 3 days, the two sides couldn't even agree to talk to each other. They have been postponed to the 25th of February. Therefore, the most important reason for this conference is to show that the international community is still committed to the issue of Syria, that the international community is not giving up on Syria, despite the insurmountable differences that exist for now, and I have to say for now, in the negotiations between the different sides in Syria. And the other reason is, of course, to help themselves. The European countries are trying to contain the issue of the refugee crisis because they're worried about these refugees arriving in their shores and them not being able to financially support them when they do arrive.
And also, Mr. Javedanfar, what will be the long-term benefits to the refugees? We were talking about financial assistance and education projects. The countries are actually able to fulfill their pledges. I mean, to what extent will country be able to actually fulfill their pledges? And with so many uncertainties going on, how optimistic are you about that?
Well, I think the countries are most likely going to meet their pledges, but Mang, you know, the refugee crisis of Syria is like an open wound that is bleeding, and the only thing that the current money does to help the refugees is to reduce the amount of bleeding. It does not heal the wounds. Let me give you a number. Before the war started in Syria, there were 22 million people living in that country. 9.5 million people in that country have been displaced. That's 43%. That's equivalent almost to 430 million people in China being displaced, or 140 million people in America being displaced. This is a disaster. This could turn, the refugee crisis of Syria could turn into the biggest disaster, humanitarian disaster of this decade and of this, perhaps of this century. The money is only there to reduce the suffering of the Syrian crisis and to help the countries that are hosting them. None of these are long-term solutions. The only long-term solution are the talks which have been taking place in Syria. Let's hope they succeed.
And certainly implementation is never an easy task. Mr. Meir Javedanfar talking to us from Tel Aviv. Thank you so much for your insights.